Awesome, awesome. Yo, 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 what it do, what it do? It's your boy Yellow the Poet here. I am here today with Mr. George Hutton. Mr. George is the author of over 100 books, entrepreneur, business owner, hypnotist, personal coach, influencer, persuasion expert, sales consultant. He wears many hats.
Yes.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Mr. George Hutton. Thank you so much for joining YTP Entertainment, Mr. Hutton. And we are definitely looking forward to learning things from you and getting some information that is definitely beneficial to us all. Welcome.
Thanks, Yellow. Thank you. It's great to be here. Thanks for having me on your show. Exciting.
Oh. We are definitely happy to have you here. Thank you so, so much. This is an honor. And oh my goodness, please elaborate. Let us know what you do.
Well, right now, I'm in the process of switching from developing products to making products. And most of my products, the bulk of the products, are centered around how to communicate better, to talk to other people, to create better connections, to be more persuasive, to create more relationship spark, and for those that want to be able to sell more stuff to people.
That is
And
awesome.
this is something that I kind of accidentally fell into. As you mentioned before, when I first started out in my career, I graduated with a degree in physics. And then I worked at a biomedical company for 10 years. But then I went to Asia to teach English. And while I was teaching English, I kind of fell in love with the scientific structure of language and how you can understand the scientific structure of language to influence people's thoughts. And I kind of first got invested or involved in that when I was a freelance copywriter. And if you're a copywriter, the better you can use your language, the more you can influence people, the more money you make. And so that's a perfect feedback system to learn all about language. So I just became fascinated with language, with psychology, with persuasion. And I studied something called NLP, neuro linguistic programming, which is about how to use your language to change people's thinking patterns. And within that collection of superheroes from NLP is a guy named Milton Erickson, who was a physician and a doctor. And he essentially invented a form of conversational hypnosis. People would come see him with a problem. They would tell him their problem, and he would say, "That reminds me of a story." And he would tell these very hard to follow, very confusing, very convoluted stories. The patient would leave about an hour later having no idea what just happened. But then a couple of weeks later, they would realize that their problem had just vanished. And so he would tell these very hypnotic, very persuasive stories, slide all these ideas into their minds. They would kind of go home, and in the working out of what had happened during the counseling session, they would essentially solve their own problems.
Wow.
And he was one of the main characters that the original inventors of NLP reverse engineered. They studied his language, they studied his storytelling techniques, and he makes up the bulk of what is now NLP. And so I've been studying that kind of technology for the past 15 years.
Awesome.
And so a lot of my work is based on using that type of conversational technology to better communicate with people, to better target their genuine interests and help them find solutions to their problems, or just make them feel better, because you want to have fun and make people feel good, because that's a fun thing to do, is make people feel really happy when you talk to them.
Yes, definitely. That is so true. That is so true. So does any of this have anything to do with the effects on the neurons in the brains?
Well, neurons are always changing. So pretty much anything we do has an effect on the neural connections in our brains, but it kind of affects the neural structure on a more structural level, where it changes your patterns of thinking and the patterns that you see out in the world. One of the main applications of NLP is it's not a persuasive language application, but you can take people that have childhood, not necessarily trauma, but childhood memories that have a certain structure to them, and they see this structure everywhere in the world, and they kind of limits them in their adult life. For example, if you're a kid, if you have parents that are struggling financially and you're always wanting stuff, and the parents can't really provide you that because of their financial limitations. As a little
Yes.
kid, you might make the assumption that they don't want to give it to me because something's wrong with me.
Mhm.
I always get the leftovers. This is the famous Charlie Brown, if you remember those
Yes.
cartoons. They would
Yes.
go
I
trick or
do.
treating, and he would always get a rock. I got a rock. I
Yeah.
got this. I got that. I got a rock. And so, if you grow up as an adult, you can still have that kind of structural implant that says, "I don't deserve the same stuff that everybody else gets." And
Mhm.
so if you kind of break that pattern doing a lot of NLP procedures, you can kind of see that you're just as worthy as everybody else as an adult. And it's really about your actions, how you interact with other people,
Mhm.
and not any sense of worthiness or unworthiness.
Okay. So with NLP, what forms, because we know that there are multiple forms of communication, what forms of communication, or what are some of the main forms of communication that actually helps with?
Well, NLP addresses all forms of communication: body
All
language,
right.
facial expressions, nonverbal behaviors, verbal behaviors. And in fact, some studies have shown that most normal communication is more than 90% nonverbal. And what NLP does is it kind of targets the person kind of preferred communication system, because we
Mhm.
all have our kind of preferred communication system. Some people talk and think in terms of verbal images or
Mhm.
mental images, pictures. Some people talk and think in terms of audio signals and sounds. Some people
Mhm.
talk and think in terms of feelings. And so
Mhm.
NLP kind of targets specifically the person's preferred communication system. But
Mhm.
as far as nonverbal behavior, I think NLP does a good job of matching and pacing and mirroring the nonverbal communication of other people.
Okay. That's pretty cool. I like that. So in what type of technique is this particular? What type of technique is it that it used to categorize and make this a more structured behavior?
Well, the first thing is to understand the person's desires, the person's intentions, what they really want. And
Mhm.
then you have to uncover, and this takes the most work, you have to uncover what they perceive as the blocks that are helping them to achieve that outcome. And these
Yeah.
blocks are often, like I mentioned before, these childhood memories where they learned or they unfortunately learned or mislearned that they're not worthy. And that's something that you can overcome with a lot of kind of inner work, a lot of imagination, a lot of kind of direct hypnosis where
Mhm.
okay, you're getting sleepier. When I count down to 10, you'll be able to sleep and I'll guide you through this process.
Right.
But it's really, really, really based on the individual. That's one of the things of NLP is it's got a lot of flexibility.
Okay. So how does NLP, because I know about hypnosis, so how does NLP differ from traditional hypnosis?
Well, traditional hypnosis is a very kind of small category of communication. NLP is really a huge umbrella over a whole bunch of different types of communication. And within NLP itself, there's the hypnotic persuasive communication. There's the kind of inner work where you kind of go through and fix your past. Then there's something called NLP modeling, which allows you to learn from other people by kind of copying what they're doing, but in a kind of a subconscious way. But generally speaking, most hypnosis is direct hypnosis. You go to see a therapist, you lay down on the couch, and you know he's going to hypnotize you. You're expecting him to hypnotize you. Then there's covert hypnosis, which is what Dr. Erickson invented. And it's almost sometimes called Ericksonian hypnosis because he's the founder of it. And this is a kind of storytelling hypnosis that kind of lead people through these stories where they don't really know they're being hypnotized.
Wow, that is
Then there's
amazing.
there's other kinds of hypnosis. Stage hypnosis is a kind of hypnosis, which is a completely different ballpark. Then there's highway hypnosis, where you're driving and you just kind of zone out. And then
Mhm.
there's fiction consumption hypnosis. Like
Yes,
if you're in the
yes.
middle of reading the latest Harry Potter book and you can't
Mhm.
wait to get home from work, as soon
Yeah.
as you sit down in your favorite chair, as soon as you open the book, bam, you're in that awesome state
Yeah.
of fiction hypnosis where you're
Yes.
just kind of
Yes.
going along for the ride. That's a completely
Yes.
different kind of hypnosis.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm very familiar.
Or when
So,
you're in the movie theater and the lights go down and then you sit back and it starts and you're like, all right. And then it's like two
yes.
hours. Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
that was fast, man.
That is so true. You don't even have time to anticipate the ending of the movie, and it's actually
Right,
there
right,
before you know it.
right, right. So
Yes.
there's really hypnosis is really not a thing that you do. It's more of a kind of a mental state, and there's a whole
Mhm.
lot of different ways to create that mental state.
Mhm. Exactly. So when you mention persuasive, see, I understand that. I'm pretty sure that you can see that I understand quite a bit from my questions, but
Mhm.
when you mention persuasiveness for the clarity of the audience, for them to understand, when you said that NLP does this persuasive technique for hypnosis, can you please help our people to understand what you mean by persuasiveness? I don't want them to be misconceived.
Right. Well, the first thing to understand is NLP didn't really invent anything. What
Okay.
NLP does is they studied the most persuasive people they could find to kind of
Mhm.
reverse engineer their communication style. Like they reverse engineered Milton Erickson, and they reverse engineered a lot of other therapists that were very, very successful back in the day. And
Mhm.
so persuasion is really, there's a theory that all communication is persuasion,
Mhm.
and there's different kind of styles of persuasion, but persuasion is essentially getting somebody else to understand your point of view, or getting somebody else to take your recommended action, or to get somebody else to at least believe what you're telling. There's a whole lot of different areas of persuasion, but generally speaking, within the broad category of persuasion, there's kind of three different basic ways. And the first way is what most salespeople use, which is outside in persuasion. Let's say
Yes.
if I want to persuade you and I'm a salesperson, the easiest way or the most common way is to take a bunch of ideas out of my head and try to push them into your head and get
Mhm.
you to do what I want you to do. And there's a
Exactly.
whole lot of technology that you can do that. The next kind, which is a lot more elegant and a lot more respectful, is I turn off my ideas and I ask you what it is that you want. And I build up the ideas from within you, what you want, and then I try to match what you want with what I would like you to do. Then
Mhm.
there's another form that I've been working on lately. It's kind of a very new form that I've been working with a lot of select clients, where you do the same thing, but it's a lot more dependent on their thoughts and feelings rather than on their specific words. Because if you if I'm selling you a car, for example, you come into my car dealership and I have you sit down in front of me and I say, so what kind of car do you want? That
Mhm.
kind of presupposes, even if I have the intention of listening to you tell me the kind of car you want, that presupposes that you'll be able to describe in full articulated language exactly what you want. But if you only have a vague idea of what you want, then that's not going to work. I can be open all day long and you won't be able to tell me what you want. So this third
Exactly.
technique helps you to kind of figure out what you want through a lot
Mhm.
of kind of respectful questions to help you build up this kind of specific idea of what you want. And
Mhm.
this is very, very useful, very, very friendly. It's very, very non-confrontational.
Yes, yes, awesome, awesome. So basically, in this particular instance, NLP is just basically focused on change and structure, which we use the word persuasive because it is kind of changing the basically this, let's say it's changing that abstract way of thinking into a
Right,
more constructive or more patternized way of thinking where
right,
people
right.
can be more focused. And that's
Exactly, exactly. Yeah, yeah.
it's understandable, totally understandable. I like this. I like this a lot. Oh my goodness. I'm literally getting chills because communication is one of my biggest things. I really love communication in all facets. It doesn't
Yeah,
matter
yes,
what it
yes,
is. I love communication. So I'm
yes.
literally getting chills right now. Just
Yeah,
talking about this because I'm
well,
excited.
as a poet, you do have a unique perspective on the power of words.
Yes, yes. I love communication, but I also do relationship coaching. So
Okay.
just thinking about some of the things that you were saying, like taking the approach of a car dealership salesman and the way that he talks to his customers, or an insurance salesman, the way that he talks to his customer, or a therapist and the way that they talk to their customers. Because I've also majored 4 years in psychology as well.
Okay. Okay.
So one of my questions is, um, when dealing with this type of communication, is there a way for NLP to take a traumatic situation and change that traumatic situation into a better situation for some people, or are they actually working on that?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Most traumatic situations are kind of a mix between what actually happened and what we perceived happened and the intention that we assume the other actors have. There's a very interesting theory from evolutionary psychology that says one of our evolutionarily beneficial traits is we assume intention when there's
Mhm,
really no intention. Like if you
mhm,
imagine two guys are out walking and one guy sees a tiger and he says,
mhm,
"That's just a tiger. As long as he doesn't see me, I'm okay." But the other guy has this instinct, this understanding, this assumption that the
mhm.
tiger has the intention of eating him and the tiger
Right.
is actively looking for him. That will make him more scared, which will make him run away. So if you're involved in any kind of traumatic event that involves other people, it's
Mhm.
often the case where you assume they had some horrible intention when they really just didn't.
Yes, that is so true. Oh my
So that's
goodness.
one of the key components of undoing past trauma is to realize that this was just an event. This was really something much more like a random accident in nature than
Mhm,
some person having the intention to hurt you, especially if
mhm.
this person was a caregiver. If you're a little
Yes,
kid and you have this belief that your caregiver has the intention to hurt you, that's going to be really traumatic. So the
yeah,
first step
it
is to go
is.
back and realize that they probably didn't know what they were doing. They were just trying the best
Mhm.
they could, and maybe they sucked at it, but they didn't
Yeah.
have the intention to hurt you.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. And it's
So,
funny because even with relationships, that technique actually works in relationships. Because
mhm,
even when I'm talking to people, I'm talking to couples sometimes
mhm.
about their relationships and how they interact with one another. One of the biggest keys is intent,
Right,
because you
right,
look
right.
at it as this person done the same thing as the person in my past did, and that's the
Yes.
reason why I don't want to have anything else to do with them. But I always tell them, just because the actions are exactly the
Right,
same, the
right,
intent is what may be different. So
right,
please
right.
understand a person's intentions before you start to take it at face value, because face value doesn't always mean what you think it means. Sometimes it's what's behind the scene that counts. It's not
Mhm,
always what's right
mhm.
in front of you. So you
Right,
have to
right,
think about
right, right.
that.
Yeah, that's a huge source of conflict in relationships. Something happens, the person misunderstands their intention, that reminds them of earlier trauma, and that just
Mhm.
makes it all that worse. And another problem that a lot of people have in relationships is we just can't communicate very well.
Yes. Oh
We
my
have
goodness.
we
Yes.
have this idea that I'm hurt, they did something wrong, therefore it's their responsibility to figure out why I'm hurt, and it's their responsibility to fix it. And if you have two people that are playing this game, it's going to be ugly, man.
Yes, it is. Oh my goodness. You'd be surprised. Oh my goodness. I mean, you probably wouldn't be surprised, but people in general would be surprised at
Yeah,
if they
yeah.
just understand simple and basic forms of communication, their lives would be so much different,
Yes,
because
yes,
that
yes.
that whole thing about perception or misunderstanding, those things right there, when you start to depreciate the value of those things, you'll be surprised at how much the value of understanding, seeing another
Mhm,
person's point of views, just go up. It starts to skyrocket. But you
mhm.
have to depreciate those other things first. Because the
Right.
first thing that I do in a situation that may become conflicting is to ask a question. Well, what do you mean by that? Because
Mhm, mhm.
certain things have happened to me in my past, and this is my understanding, but I would like to get your understanding. Help me understand your version.
Yeah, yeah.
I just think that's a much
A
better approach.
another great way to handle that is this new persuasion that I've been developing is to make the assumption that they might not be able to articulate what they meant by that.
Hmm.
And so you could say something like, "Well, you said this, and because of my past, I assumed it meant this, but does it really mean something else?" Yes or no?
Yes,
And
yes,
did you
indeed.
mean that to be this intention, or was it really this intention? And kind of
That,
give them the benefit of the doubt, give them a
yes,
couple positive choices, and let them
yes,
choose what's the best one. And that can really help
yes.
open up the communication.
Yes, it does. I had one couple just recently, and that's funny that you said that. And I did the same thing with them. And only difference is instead of me point at one, I say, so what is your take on that? I point at the other one, I say, what is your take on that? I say, what you would need to do is sometimes if it doesn't seem right, question that particular portion of the topic and explain what that meant to you and ask them if this is what that means to them. So I would make them go back and forth. And it's easier if they're talking to each other because it opens up that big window that say, hey, we really need to talk. We really need to talk more. We really need to understand more.
Right.
We really need to see more in one another. Because you never know that this relationship may actually be a better relationship than you think it is.
Yeah.
You can't
It almost
assume that
always
it's a
turns out
bad
that way.
relationship. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I tell them. I teach them, I let them know, look, sometimes you can't assume that a person is a bad person or that you're a bad person or you're not a good fit or this person not a good fit. First, let's see where the understanding is. Once you see where that understanding is, don't just understand that person, but it's just as important to understand the most important relationship you will ever have in your life, and that's that relationship with oneself. It's more important to understand oneself than it is to understand anybody else. But
Absolutely.
once you understand who you are, it opens you up to try and at least make the attempt to understand
Right.
what other people are.
Right.
And now you
Right.
have an opportunity to build better relationships.
Yep. Yep. That's why that same phrase was written over the oracle at Delphi back in ancient Greece. Man, know thyself.
Yes, yes. I love that. I love that because this self-preservation is one in Native American. We always use the old terminology. Self-preservation is the first law of nature. So know yourself first before you start getting into other things or getting into the relationships with other people. It's
Right.
basically what they're talking about.
Yeah. I think there's even a similar statement from Sun Tzu, the ancient Chinese general who wrote The Art of War. Know your enemy like yourself, 1,000 battles, 1,000 victories.
Yes, yes, yes. I actually read that Art of War, so I love that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I love the Art of War. It's pretty good.
Yeah,
It's pretty
yeah.
good when you understand where they're coming from and the reason why
Right.
those wars were even started in the first place. It's actually a pretty good story. Definitely.
Yeah,
I love
yeah.
it. I love it. Oh my goodness, man. You got me excited. You got me excited. This is a first time someone has ever come off with the diverse levels of communication. It's not a lot of people who really understand where that goes. So in that, I'm curious, you mentioned something else that I'm extremely, this is a topic that I love so much. You
Oh, yeah.
said you began studying various esoteric topics. Please elaborate on the esoteric because I love esoterics. I love it.
I've loved the idea of esoteric topics, but I'm always grounded in the idea of science because originally I studied physics in college. I worked in science, and one of my favorite TV shows from a writing standpoint was the X-Files.
Oh, wow,
Because
yes.
they always had this crazy stuff happen, but because the two characters, one guy believed in UFOs, the other character was a doctor, and they were able to explain whatever happened in terms of both science and metaphysics, and I love that. So I like
Yes.
to push myself into the land of esoteric as much as I possibly can, so long as I can come up with a somewhat plausible scientific explanation of why that is.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Oh my goodness.
And so I've been fascinated with human nature, with evolutionary psychology, with all kinds of experimental persuasion techniques. I've gone through Reiki training. I've gone
Uh-huh.
through I've went to a few kind of weird kind of manifestation seminars that seemed a little bit too weird to be true. But I'm always interested in the craziest stuff. I'm always interested in the crazy things, but I need to be able to explain it in terms of science somehow.
Yes, yes, understood. Totally understood.
But
I was
but
looking
probably the
for that
past
too.
10 years, I've been fascinated in human nature, why
Mhm.
we do what we do, the economics of human decision making,
Oh wow. So
and the
what
kind of this.
started your fascination in human nature?
Well, it was when I first started to hire myself out as a copywriter because I thought the more I could understand human nature, the
Mhm.
more I could sell stuff. And so I started reading all these books on psychology. One of the probably best books I read early in my career was Robert Cialdini's
Mhm.
Psychology, the Persuasion, or the Persuasion, the Psychology of Influence. And he's the guy that uncovered all these terms like authority, social proof, commitment, and
Mhm.
consistency. And those were just like, I felt like I found this secret hack to human nature.
It's
And
funny because
when you combine that, which I think is a function of
uh-huh.
human evolution, with the hypnotic language patterns of Milton Erickson, you can really create a lot of awesome persuasion kind of
Yes,
ideas
yes,
if you
indeed.
target people's authority instinct, social proof instinct.
Right. So what would be the difference between what you're learning about human nature and when the FBI does profiling?
I haven't studied profiling too much, although I did read an in-depth article about FBI profiling by Malcolm Gladwell.
Mhm.
And he came to the conclusion that FBI profiling doesn't really help that much to catch criminals. And so they have a lot of theories. They have a lot of based on kind of people that are sociopaths or psychopaths, and they have kind of different upbringings. And so I think they take the idea of a non-normal human and their non-normal upbringing and try to
Mhm.
see how that will present itself in the adult life.
Mhm.
So as far as persuading people, I persuade people based on the assumption that they have a normal evolutionary psychological makeup and they have a relatively normal upbringing with your low level trauma that happens to most kids. I don't
Mhm.
really think in terms of abnormal psychology, although I did read a book once on sociopaths written by
Mhm.
a prison psychologist who spent his career studying sociopaths. And I was just curious if I could learn anything by understanding the mind of a sociopath. And there's a lot of overlap between sociopathic behavior and communication and Ericksonian hypnosis. The difference is
Mhm.
that sociopaths, they have zero conscience.
Wow.
They
Wow.
just don't care who they hurt,
That's
which makes
interesting.
them absolutely fearless when they talk to people.
Mhm.
Like, you have a normal person who's in a bar talking to a girl, and he thinks, "Maybe I could lie to her and tell her I'm a doctor or something." And most
Mhm.
people have an inherent kind of aversion to doing that, so they're a little bit difficult to do that. But sociopaths, they don't have that. They can
Yeah,
just lie with a straight face, and they can say exactly what will get the girl feeling happy, and they don't care about her feelings. Most
exactly.
normal people have this kind of internal inhibition to deliberately hurting someone else just for their own
Yes.
personal gain. Sociopaths, they don't have that.
Wow.
So the FBI studying guys like that probably, yeah, I don't know. I really have. That's the only book I read on sociopaths and any kind of
Okay.
FBI psychology of profiling killers or whatever.
So just even if it's just a guesstimation, what effect do you think NLP will have on a person that is schizophrenic?
Um, Probably not too much because NLP kind of requires the the client or the target or the customer to have a kind of clear idea of who they are, what they want, what
Mhm.
their shortcomings are, the things they like to overcome. And it's my understanding that people that are schizophrenic probably don't have that, at least a full enough picture like a normal person. So it might be less than effective on a schizophrenic person than a more or less normal person.
Right, right. I was just curious because there's when you look at a platform, I'll say, that's actually dealing with all these various form of communications, then I was just curious on what effects would it have on different people. You mentioned one that I was curious about, which is the sociopath. Then I was thinking about the person that's schizophrenic, and
Mm,
then some of the people that are mentally disabled but not physically disabled. You know
mhm.
what I'm saying? So I was curious about what effects would NLP have on these people, and would they even give them a try to see what will actually be the outcome?
Yeah, that would be interesting to try some specific NLP procedures on people with different mental disorders. However, I think the door for that is essentially closed, at least in our society, because anytime you're talking to treating patients, it has to go through the official licensing process of the medical boards and all these other boards. And
Mm-hmm.
any doctor that would try any non-standardized treatment for a schizophrenic person, for example, they might risk losing their license.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Definitely.
it would be interesting to see the results, but I don't know how that kind of a study could be done, at least in the current medical environment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was just curious about that because
Yeah.
when it's
Yeah,
like
it's a
I work,
fantastic question.
yeah, I work with a lot of students, and some of them have different forms of mental illnesses,
Mhm.
and something like this, I just feel like it could possibly be a breakthrough, even if it's a minor breakthrough, that's
Yeah,
still a
yeah.
stepping stone that's
Right,
a
right,
bit above where they are today, and it
right,
could
right,
be an opportunity to help them become um, more active in a normal society, whereas they
mhm,
would not normally be able to
right,
be as active because of their conditions.
right.
So I was just thinking about it like that. That's awesome. That is
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah, all you really need is just one small shift in their thinking to let them know that, "Hey, I can change the way I behave. I can change the way I
Mhm.
think." And that's
Exactly.
that's a huge controversy when it comes to psychology and psychiatry is talk therapy, does that actually work, or is it better just to give people drugs and treat them with pharmaceuticals?
Right. And see, I'm more with the natural. So
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
curious, if there is something that's natural that could actually help them as opposed to constantly giving them these different types of drugs that could possibly inhibit them more
right,
so
right,
in a physical way rather than in a mental way. Because
right.
those physical things cause another mental problem. Like
Oh,
when
yeah,
you're in
right,
pain, you're thinking all these different things when you're in pain. And why have to go through all of that when there could possibly be a natural way? And I feel
right.
like this NLP is natural. It's a natural way
Yeah,
because you're not having to intake anything in order to be able to go through the process of it. It's
right,
just all
right,
natural.
right.
I think that would be good. I do. I
Yeah.
think that'd be great.
Yeah,
So
hopefully there's some courageous cutting edge medical doctors out there that are willing to try stuff like this in addition to the stuff they're kind of supposed to do, which is the pharmacology solutions.
yeah, yeah. I hope so. I hope so. I
Yeah,
hope that
yeah,
turns into one of the greatest things ever.
yeah,
So
yeah.
another thing that I'm curious about is when you were um, in all these different places teaching English, um,
Mhm.
how how hard was it to teach these people a second language when their first language is so different from ours?
It actually wasn't that difficult. Both in Korea and Japan, students learn English in school. They just don't learn to speak English. They can
Okay.
read and write very well, but as far as speaking, it's a completely different ball of wax. And so my job was really to be a model of how to
Hmm.
speak English out loud, how to pronounce it. And I modeled teaching with super, super over the top, outside the comfort zone enthusiasm and flamboyance. And they kind of unconsciously copied me.
Cool.
So that was actually a lot of fun. I didn't actually have to teach someone who didn't speak English. I had to help them to practice the stuff that they already knew.
That's
So
awesome.
it was actually a blast. It was a lot of fun.
Wow, that is awesome. That is
And
awesome.
probably the best part was to have a classroom of high school kids, and we would go through the lecture, the book or whatever, and they would have to do like a little skit in front of the class. And at the
Mhm.
beginning of the year, they were all super shy, super terrified. They would not look at each other. They would hide behind their notes on the paper. But by the end of the year, some of them were like just super loud and flamboyant, and they were having a lot of fun. And just watching that transition was just fantastic.
Yes, yes,
Watching them
indeed.
kind of come out of their shell was just an amazing
Yeah.
thing.
That is awesome. That is totally awesome because you get to see those transformations happen right in front
Yes,
of your face. That is
yes,
awesome.
yes, yes.
That is awesome.
Despite the low pay, it was probably one of my more enjoyable jobs that I've had in my career.
So, so was that low pay because of the economy, or it
Well,
was
English teachers in foreign countries don't generally make that much money because
okay?
with the supply and demand. I mean, you can get an English teacher easy. Just all they have to do is speak English. I did have some specific training and certifications, but still, with the supply and demand, you're not going to make a lot of money teaching English in another country. I mean,
Right.
relative to the local economy, it's enough to get by, but it's not. You're not going to get
Mhm.
rich or anything.
I hope no one thinks that they're going to get rich off of teaching a different language. I've never heard of anyone getting rich off of that, but maybe
Well,
it's possible.
there are some crazy teachers in Korea that are getting really, really rich because Korea has this super crazy kind of private academy system because
Yeah.
they're so competitive to get into good colleges. It's just massive competition. And so they go to high school, they go to junior high school, and then afterwards they go to these private what they're called hogwons, which are private academies to help their chances to get into college. And with the recent internet in the last 10 years, there's been a lot of teachers that are teaching not just to a classroom, but on the internet. And some of these top teachers are literally making millions of dollars a year teaching mathematics and English and stuff because they're such good teachers and they're so enthusiastic and they collect so many students and they're just making a ton of money, man.
Wow, that is awesome. Okay. That is awesome.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. I'm thank you for the education because I never knew anything about that. That is awesome though. That is really
Yeah,
good.
and
I'm,
that's the cool thing about the internet because no matter who you are, no matter where you live, if you have an internet connection, if you can teach people how to do things, you can
mhm.
just scale that up around the planet. If you have 1,000 students, each paying you $100 a month, that's $100,000 a month
Yeah,
of whatever
yeah.
you want to teach the people.
That is so
So there's
true.
really, really a lot of
Ooh,
opportunities out there. If you can,
wow.
talk a good game and teach people how to do things,
Mhm.
there's a lot of opportunity.
Wow. So in your research and development laboratory, what were your experiments?
Well, I worked for a cardiopulmonary division, and
Okay.
when you go in to get an open heart surgery, they have to bypass the clogged artery on your heart, and so they take
Mhm.
an artery from your leg and bypass it. But while they're doing that, your heart and your lungs are stopped,
Oh,
and
wow.
so they
Okay.
have to have this whole bank of equipment called perfusion equipment. And so while
Mhm.
your heart and lungs are stopped, your blood is pumped outside your body through these products to do the
Mhm.
same thing that your heart and your lungs do. So you have a fake heart and a fake lung. And so we made all those products. And so our testing was mostly using large amounts of bovine blood to test
Mhm.
these products.
Okay. So
So it
is
was
that kind
a
of
lot of
similar?
biology, a lot of chemistry. And
Mhm.
we would buy about 15 to 20 gallons of
Mhm.
blood daily that we would buy directly from the slaughterhouse.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, that was a business I never would have even dreamed of on my own. But in the time that I was working there in Southern California during the 90s, there was a few of these companies that were doing the same thing. So this one
Mhm.
guy and a couple of his workers would go to the slaughterhouse every morning and collect 50, 60, 70 gallons of blood and then just deliver it to all these medical companies.
Ooh,
That was
that's
his
a lot of
business. He's a blood
blood.
delivery guy. I mean, what do you do for a living? I deliver blood to people. What the what?
That's a lot of blood. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness. Oh Oh my goodness. And my first time ever seeing a slaughterhouse was back at home in Chicago. There
Uh-huh.
was this hog, like, oh my goodness, that thing was bigger than some cars. That's
Wow.
how huge that hog was. And they were chasing the hog down with a forklift. And they
Woof.
were actually ramming it with the forklift, running literally through its body with these, and the forks were abnormally long. So it
Uh-huh.
was a long forklift and they were ramming, and the thing would actually get off of the forklift and still keep trying to run for its life. Like, oh my goodness, that was crazy. I thought it was going to
Yeah.
run out into the street, but what ended up happening is there was a second driver who caught it before it could even get past the fence and
Wow.
lifted him up, and they put him inside of the machine. That was it. I was like, oh my goodness. I've never seen that before. That was so brutal. I was probably only about 11 years old when I saw
That's some trauma there, man. Jim and Christmas.
that. I mean, it didn't bother me, don't get me wrong, but it was just so interesting watching them just constantly chasing this huge hog. I was like, oh my goodness, so is that how you do this? And I can never eat pork or beef because I'm allergic to it. So just
Oh,
seeing
okay.
that was just so crazy. It was
Wow.
exciting to me too, because I'm just seeing them chase this hog with this forklift. It was crazy.
Wow.
It's the biggest hog I had ever seen, though. So
Yeah.
I don't know if there was some type of chemically induced hog or what, but I've never seen
Some
one
kind of
that
mutant
big in
hog.
my life.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I've never seen one that big in my life. That was the first time and the last time I've ever seen one that big.
Wow. Yeah, I had no idea they got that big.
Me neither. Me neither. But that was huge.
Yeah.
So I said it had to be something with that, because what I know now and what I've seen now versus what I saw back then, there had to be something else to
Mm,
that.
yeah.
We never
Maybe
know.
that's why they were chasing it. Maybe they were chasing it because they thought if they got loose into society, they would find out the scientific experiments they were doing on hogs or something.
It's possible. That is possible.
X-Files hog.
X-Files, Twilight Zone, you
Yeah.
name it. So I definitely understand that. So yeah, that was amazing. You did that laboratory for 10 years.
Yeah, yeah,
Woo-wee. So how
yeah.
effective was it in the stock market for that particular type of job? The stock market had to be pretty up there.
Yeah, the 10 years that I worked there for the company, this was back during the '90s. If you remember, the Nasdaq during the '90s was like at
Yes.
45-degree angle the whole time. That
Yes.
was when
Yeah.
that was the origin story of the famous Greenspan put, buy the dip. So the average return on the stock for the 10 years that I worked there, the average yearly return was 36%.
Okay. It's not as much as I thought it would be, but it's not bad either.
Yeah. So yeah, the
Wow.
stock was just screaming higher, and there was a lot of people that had worked at that company for a long time, and the kind of during the go-go '90s, and was Nasdaq was jamming.
Yeah.
Everybody was talking about we just need one more split and we can retire early, and everyone was like super pumped about the stock going up and going up and going up.
Yes. Yes. So I'm curious, how did any of were you was your job affected by any of COVID?
Actually, no. I was, like, really petrified when COVID first hit. I saw the news from China, and I expected the worst, and I started stockpiling stuff. But as far as my job and my sales, by that time, I had just come back to the States after I lived in Asia for 15 years. I came
Mhm.
back maybe 6 months before COVID hit, and so I was waiting while I was in Asia long enough so I had enough business online so I wouldn't need to get a
Awesome.
job when I came back. So when I came
Awesome.
back, I just kind of slid into the same thing I was doing, and I was worried that I was some of my customers might lose their jobs and they might not be able to afford the product, but that really didn't happen. So I didn't actually notice anything
Mhm.
negative
That's
from
awesome.
COVID. I completely lucked out.
Oh,
I mean,
wow.
the only
That
thing different I did was stockpile all the stuff that I never ended up using, and I would just
is,
have to wear a mask when I went outside all the time.
hey,
But I really, really got lucky with COVID. COVID didn't really affect my business a bit, and I thank my lucky stars for that.
that's beautiful. It didn't impact my business either.
Yeah,
As a poet, as an author, as a podcast host, I was still able to do all these things
yeah, yeah,
virtually. Now, as far as the being a relationship coach, I started doing more like here on the Zoom and doing more virtual rather
yeah,
than trying to be face to face with people because not everybody is honest about their ailments or their sicknesses and things of that nature. I just didn't want to take a chance on being exposed to that. So I would
right,
invite
right.
everybody to the Zoom and just make it a lot easier. So if any of your items, any of your things, anything around your house, or if you come to me, if anything is affected, there's no reason to have a distrust because we're doing it virtually.
Right, right, right.
Make it easy.
Yeah,
Simple and easy.
yeah.
So um you were doing there was a time where you had started researching and doing some development and persuasion um on hypnosis. How much time did it take you to actually come to a consensus about any further research or wanting to do further research?
I would say that the first couple of seminars I went to learn conversational hypnosis, I was kind of blown away, but I quickly found out that learning conversational hypnosis takes as much time and dedication as learning a second language.
Hmm,
And
okay.
so for the first 5 or so years after I was exposed to conversational hypnosis, I would spend at least an hour a day sitting in coffee shops in Japan, just writing out these language patterns over and over and over again. And the
Mhm.
more I started to write out these language patterns, that really started to change my neurology, that question you asked earlier. And I started
Okay.
to think in different ways. And that really, really, really opened my eyes to what's possible.
Okay.
So that was probably a very, very pivotal 5-year period in my life when I was just drilling these patterns into my brain. Because once you
Mhm.
drill these kind of language structures into your brain, it changes how you think. I've read a
Mhm.
few books by Steven Pinker, and he writes about how the structure of language is very much related to the structure of thought. So if you change
Yes.
the structure of your language, you will change the structure of your thought, and you'll just think about the world in different ways.
Mhm.
And I've
That's
always
cool.
been kind of researching how to come up with better ways, more effective ways, more elegant ways, more respectful ways to persuade people.
Mhm.
And I'm still doing that today. And I have a couple of clients that are kind of willingly being my experimental subjects to try these different things to see if they work or not. And they're
Awesome.
just killing it. They're having a blast. And so I'm
Awesome.
still kind of in the process of continuous development of different conversational strategies and different persuasion strategies that you can use to
Mhm.
just covertly, elegantly, pleasingly persuade people and just have
Exactly.
everyone be happier after the fact.
Yes. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. So, um, out of all the people that you have had to actually um experiment with, what would you say the success rate has been so far?
I would say the success rate increases significantly once people get over this false idea that you can
Mhm.
learn something and just go out and do it. For the people
Exactly.
that realize it's going to be a learning curve, they have massive success. I'd say 80, 90%, 100%. The
Awesome.
only lack of success is because people have this false belief, probably programmed in by the snake oil self-help industry, that all you need is a couple of ideas in your head and you can just go out and just completely change your life. But the
Yeah,
people that realize it's a learning curve, they always just absolutely kill it.
awesome, awesome. So what are some of the learning curves that people run into during the process, and what are some of the techniques that they will use to overcome them?
The Probably the biggest hurdle is any kind of social anxiety that people feel,
Mm,
because being able to be persuasive means you have to have a conversation with somebody and
mhm.
feel completely confident and congruent.
Yes, yes.
And so the biggest hurdle is accepting that it's going to take a long time. And I always recommend when people are starting out to go as slow as they possibly can. To just start mingling with people. For some people, just sitting in a crowded bar and just sitting back and enjoying the place, that's a lot for their level of social anxiety. And then you just slowly move forward in whatever is comfortable next. Some people, they can talk to people, but using these language patterns seems a little strange. And so I just have them go as slow as they can to try like steps and teach it or practice it just like they're doing like a regular physical exercise program. I mean, if you tried to get up off the couch after 10 years of inactivity and run a marathon, you'd end up in the hospital.
Yeah.
So you have to go outside and walk for 20 minutes a day for a couple of months. Then you can walk for an hour a day for a couple of months. Then you might jog really slowly for a couple of months. Then you might jog a little bit more quickly. And a year later, you might be able to jog 4 or 5 miles a day. And then maybe in another year, after you keep jogging, then you might be able to run a marathon.
Yes.
So I teach them to think of the same kind of process of go slower than you think you can. Because if you take a year, 2 years to build up your social confidence, and during that time you're writing out all these language patterns, in a couple of years, you're going to have a skill that few people know exists. And you're going to be able to do things with that skill that it's going to make you seem like a walking magician with these language patterns and the persuasion.
Yes, indeed. Oh my goodness. That is so true. That is so true. So what does a typical language pattern look like on paper?
Well, these are all language patterns that are part of English. And so it's not like some foreign thing you've never heard, but one language pattern is the more you X, the more you X. The more you do this, the more you'll be able to do that. And if the way you use it is X is something I want you to do, and Y is something I have an idea that you'll like to do. The more you study hypnosis, the easily you'll be able to make money.
Exactly.
The more you take your time building social skills, the more naturally you'll be able to talk to pretty girls. The more you study algebra, the more naturally you'll be able to start to think of creative new ideas in ways you haven't thought of before.
Yes.
And so that's just one pattern. And the Milton model is a collection of these patterns, and there's about 50 specific patterns like this within the Milton model. And I like to think of them and I talk about them as if they were kind of different martial arts moves.
Oh, yes.
You just drill each one over and over and over again. And after a couple of years, you have a whole collection of patterns. Another class of hypnotic language patterns is something called presuppositions, linguistic presuppositions. Like, for example, say I'm selling cars and I want to convince you that the car is popular, because if the car is popular, that implies social proof and you'll be much more likely to buy it. But if I just say this car is popular, you might not believe it. But if I say one of the reasons this car is popular is the titanium engine. So not only did I give you a reason why the car is popular, but I said one of the reasons this car is popular is a titanium engine. So now in your head, you have this idea that there's a lot of reasons why this car is popular, and you're focusing on one of them, which is a titanium engine. So that's a kind of way to sneak the idea that the car is popular into your brain.
Yes, yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. It's kind of like the technique that I use for relationships. I say you may have had multiple relationships, but each person's intentions were different. And now you're in a new relationship. You have to see what this person's intentions are and not always reflect on the past relationships and their intentions.
Yeah, you can use the pattern I just gave you. The more you realize that every person's intention is different, the more you'll understand how natural it is for you to enjoy this relationship even more than you are now.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. I like that. Thank you very much. I like that.
But there's 50 specific patterns, 50 specific moves, and if you train yourself, you can use them just like a martial artist while you're talking to your clients and just bam, 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 and just make their brain, wow, yeah, awesome, yeah, the better relationship, yeah, woo, let's go.
It's funny because when I'm doing that whole meditation thing, I actually use the techniques that I learned in martial arts to do my meditation. And when I'm teaching people how to meditate, I still use those same techniques.
Yeah.
So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's good. That's
That.
good.
So tell us more about the, goodness gracious, nearly 80 books on self-development.
Well, most of them are a mix of the Milton model, conversational persuasion, how to persuade people within a lot of different contexts. A lot of them touch on our natural makeup from an evolutionary psychology standpoint. Because if I'm selling you a car and I know you want a red car, it's easier to sell you a red car. But if I understand the evolutionary psychological makeup of people, their instincts and what drives them, it's just easier to get them to listen to my message so long as I phrase it in those terms. So a lot of books are about that. A lot of books are also about how to kind of heal your past, to kind of go self-hypnosis your way into your past and change the intentions you assumed on the actors in those memories and just kind of rebuild yourself. And a lot of them are based on sales. A lot of them are based on relationships, how to start relationships, how to build yourself up so you have some strong relationship skills. And a couple of them are about defensive language patterns. One of my books is called Weaponized Hypnosis. So you can use all these language patterns to get people to stay away from you.
Yes, indeed. There's some affirmations that work too.
Yeah. Another one of my books is called Verbal Assassin, like some quick and dirty techniques to avoid getting manipulated.
Wow.
So they're kind of based on language pattern. Yeah.
That's a good one for a lot of females.
Yes, yes.
A lot of females are easier persuaded than the males are. We tend to be a lot more skeptical. They're skeptical, don't get me wrong, I'm not putting them down because I don't believe in that whole one's better than the other thing. But then there are certain characteristics that are stronger in one than they are in the other.
Right.
And I think that that's one of the things that makes a little bit stronger than the females.
Right.
Just to be
yeah. It's interesting you mentioned that because just the other night I was watching this documentary on Amazon Prime about these kind of scammers, this guy and his wife, and they started this kind of Facebook teaching group. And the name of the documentary is Escaping from the Twin Flames Cult. And this guy and his wife teach people how to find their twin flames, but they have to pay a whole lot of money to keep these courses. But most of their victims are females. And so the females seem much more willing to believe in this magic idea of finding a twin flame if I only pay $2,000 a month to these two scam artists on the internet.
Wow, that is crazy. A lot of people don't understand how that actually works, though. It doesn't work off of what someone says to you or what someone does to you. That is an aura of feeling, an instinct. That is intuition on finding that counterpart that actually makes up for the things that you lack in. That has nothing to do with someone being able to teach you that can't be taught. I just thought I would clear that up for some of our audience out there who may mess around and get caught up in something else like that. I hope that no one else gets caught up into that, because that's not cool at all.
Right. Yeah.
Did the people end up getting caught?
I'm still working my way through the documentary. It's about a 5 or 6 series documentary. I've only watched the first couple of episodes, but this guy is a real sleazy character. He's been trying all these scams his whole life, and he finally found one that worked. And as far as I've watched, this guy is already a multimillionaire by scamming these people out of these online courses that can allegedly help people find their twin flame. But definitely a sleazy character. And so, yes, you definitely can use some defensive language patterns to ask people some basic questions to find out if they're a scammer or not, because there are ways you can tell. If you understand something called linguistic presuppositions, you can tell when people are hiding beneath their language, and you can ask the right questions and phrase them the right way to help you figure out if this guy's manipulating you or if they're the real deal.
Exactly. Is it possible for you to give us an example of at least one question to ask?
Well, one powerful negative technique using a linguistic presupposition is the famous "when did you stop beating your wife" question. This is kind of the
Right.
example of the gotcha questions that TV interviewers like to ask. And the way
Mhm.
it works is you're in this interview, the person asks you, "So when did you stop beating your wife?" And they don't want you to answer the question. They want you to say, "What? I, how dare you?" And the people watching think, "Oh my gosh, he must have used to beat his wife." And so the way to defeat
Yeah.
that is to remain calm and just hear the question, wait till the end of the question, make sure you understand the whole question, and then question the hidden idea inside the question. So if someone says,
Mhm.
"When did you stop beating your wife?" You just calmly say, "I'm not sure I understand. Why do you think I used to beat my wife?" And you put it back on them.
Exactly.
And they probably won't know
Exactly.
what to say. And they'll just be like, "Well," and so
Let's
a
see.
broader way to do this is something called the meta model. The meta model is
Mhm.
just asking specific questions like, "Why specifically do you think I used to beat my wife? Who specifically told you
Mhm.
that I used to beat my wife? How specifically did you come to the conclusion that I used to beat my wife?"
Mhm. Especially when you're using the word specifically, because
Yeah,
there's no way around
right,
specifics.
right, right. And so a very basic understanding of the meta model can help you avoid getting scammed. Like, how specifically are your classes going to help me find my soulmate?
Mhm.
What
Exactly.
specifically is it about your classes that will teach me how to find my soulmate? What
Mhm.
specifically will I learn from your classes that will help me find
Mhm.
my soulmate? How specifically will I find my soulmate after I go to your classes? If they can't answer those, they're scamming you.
Yes, yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Because I don't know anyone that can help you find your soulmate.
Right, 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 right.
Except you.
Yeah, except you, your own person. You have to go out. That's your whole purpose in life, is to figure out how to find your soulmate.
And I can really speak on soulmates because my wife and I are actually soulmates.
Yeah,
So I can actually speak on that. So and I can speak honestly, truly, and freely on
yeah, right.
that. And specifically on that.
Yeah,
So when people start talking about soulmates and I'm listening to what they're saying, and I'm like, that's not a soulmate. I don't know who taught you what a soulmate is, but most of the people that I talk to that constantly say, "Oh, no, this is my soulmate because of this, because of it," and I'm like, "Okay, if that's how you feel,
yeah,
I'm gonna walk away from this subject." Okay,
right, right, right.
it's funny. It's funny.
Yeah.
So another thing that I saw on your page that intrigued me, why is the dating market such a train wreck?
Oh, the main reason is social media. If you imagine somebody in the 50s, they go to high school. When they think
Mhm.
about getting a date, they can only reference the people they see in real life. And so they have a
Yes,
good idea of these people that they see in real life. And if somebody within
yes,
that class of people likes them, that's a fantastic feeling. And when that person likes
yes.
them, then there's this thing called opportunity costs. And an
Hmm.
opportunity cost is the things we can't have once we decide
Hmm.
what we want. This is why it's so hard to order from a menu when you're hungry. As soon as you order this, you can't have anything else. I want this. I know I want this.
Exactly.
I don't want this. That's sometimes
Yep.
called the paradox of choice. But if you're
Hmm.
exposed to social media, if you have a profile on social media, that creates an artificially huge opportunity cost. And it gives you an
Hmm.
artificial overestimation of your own value.
Hmm.
And it also distorts what you think is possible on the dating market. If you're in a small town high school in the 50s, you're going to have a bunch of average people at your high school, and you're going to have an idea that what I can get since I'm average is pretty average, and that's going to be okay. But if you're
Hmm.
exposed to social media, you see all these beautiful people on social media, you see all these gorgeous porn stars if you watch a lot of porn, and you have this massive over expectation of what's possible.
Hmm.
Another reason is a massive overestimation of our own value.
Hmm.
I
Yes.
don't know if have you watched the TV show Friends?
Yes, I have.
There's
Yes.
one episode where Joey was studying French, And he listened to the guy on the tape say something in French, and then Joey said blah 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 blah, completely mangling it. But then the guy said fantastic. So Joey actually thought he could speak French. And so he went to try out for a play, and he actually had to speak French, but he was just making stuff up. And so that's kind of what's happening to people today. They have this overestimation of their own value based on the crap they hear on social media.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have an overestimation of our own value. We have an over expectation of what we think we can get. And there's massive amounts of opportunity cost, artificial opportunity cost. So it's hard to settle with somebody when you're getting all this attention online.
Yes, that is so true. That is so true. It really is.
And with the invention of online dating apps a few years ago, that's created this whole kind of hookup culture thing. Where it's kind of almost been normalized, where you can just have as much sex as you can with as many people as you can. And that the more people you're with, that kind of destroys your ability to get in an actual relationship, because relationships are difficult. You got to do a lot of work within the relationship to maintain the health of that relationship. And so people have this kind of fantasy idea that I can just find somebody and poof, it'll be perfect. So there's a lot of these reasons why the dating market is a wreck today.
Yes.
Unfortunately.
Oh my goodness. I kind of look at the social media platform portion of it as someone who was trying to combine. They were trying to be innovative, but they were trying to combine what used to happen in the past, where you actually had to be face to face with people, with that telephone dating crap, which I've never gotten into any of these types of dating platforms or any of that. I've never gotten into that, but they're trying to combine those so that you can still see people as well as talk to people, and still kind of make it seem like you have that one-on-one facial interaction. But because of all of the AI and the different platforms that are used to enhance the looks of people, you're still not getting what you need to have that proper substance in a relationship. It's just not happening.
Right. From an evolutionary psychology perspective, relationships take a long time to form. You can't just hook up with someone on the internet and have sex the first night and expect to have a healthy relationship. It takes a long time to get to know somebody, because as you're getting to know each other, you're kind of also conforming to each other's kind of personality. And that's a long, slow, naturally or normally organic process. And that the modern technology has just obliterated that.
Yes, it has. And the forms of communication that are necessary in a relationship, it doesn't come in a matter of seconds. Like social media, gives you that image in your head, making you think that everything can happen in a matter of seconds. No, it cannot. It's not possible. The only thing that you can build in seconds is intrigue. That's the only thing that you can build in a matter of seconds is intrigue. If you're intriguing enough to get this person to even want to talk to you, or want to listen to you, or even want to be in your presence, then maybe they'll stay a little bit longer, depending on if you're intellectual enough to hold the conversation or have a relevant level of communication. Yeah, they may stay and talk to you. They may listen to you. They may even be interested in you afterwards, but it still doesn't build the relationship. It's only the start of getting that person interested. That's it.
Right. That's another problem, is everything in society today is instant.
Yes.
I've read some negative reviews for streaming shows, and the main reason for the negative review is because the streaming show only released one show per week. The person wanted to watch all of them at once, and because they couldn't do that, they were angry, so they left a negative review.
Wow.
I mean, people can't even wait a week to watch their TV show, but everything comes instant on Amazon, and it's just so people have no patience today. Our psychology is wrecked by social media.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Oh my goodness. So, can you give us an empowering statement or motivational piece that would actually be something great for our audiences?
One of my favorite storytelling structures is the hero's journey from Joseph Campbell.
Okay.
And the hero's journey is so compelling to us because everybody feels they are here for a reason. Everybody has this dream that they're supposed to they're supposed to discover their purpose. And once they discover their purpose, then that will help them to do something fantastic that will help society. And in exchange, they will get the massive validation for society. And
Yes.
modern people are searching for purpose, but we think that purpose is supposed to be given to us from someone else. But it's your job as a human. It's everybody's job as a human to discover your own purpose, to build your own ambition, and go on your own hero's journey so you can do something fantastic, so you can help a
Yes.
great many people and get those great rewards in exchange for that. That is the best transaction ever, to do something fantastic, create some fantastic ideas, some fantastic product, some fantastic novel, some fantastic poem that will help a lot of people. And in exchange, you will get paid not just a lot of money, but a lot of validation and respect and admiration. That is
Yes.
that is the human drive. That is your purpose. That is why you are here on this earth, to do something magnificent.
Yes. Yes, indeed. I love it. I love it. I love it. So tell our audience why you chose this platform for YTP Entertainment.
I would say, because I like your name, Yellow the Poet.
I thank you for that, definitely.
And I watched a few of your videos, and I like the way you talk to your guests. You're very open. You listen to them. You don't kind of over up. It's not like an argument like some podcast hosts have arguments. You're a very, very open communicator. It's a very wonderful back and flow conversation.
Thank you so much. I appreciate
Definitely look up Yellow the Poet
that.
for words of wisdom.
Thank you so much. I truly appreciate that. So, do me a favor and take us out, letting our people know what ways they can actually reach out to you. How can they learn more from you and about you?
We've got a one-stop page that lists all of our products, mindpersuasion.com/start. Mind Persuasion, one word, mindpersuasion.com/start. And that will list all of our products, all of our books, all of our coaching courses, everything you want for Mind Persuasion, you can find on that page.
Awesome.
If you have any specific questions, feel free to drop me a line. That the contact button is on that page too. So we'd love to hear from you.
Yes, yes, indeed. Hey, look, ladies and gentlemen, make sure that you are definitely reaching out to Mr. George Hutton. This man has a lot of great information, powerful knowledge, and I truly enjoyed talking to this man because I'm telling you, we went over in our time.
Yeah, we did.
Just to show you how great this conversation is. If you all don't understand how serious communication is, how important communication is, the different ways to communicate, please, by all means, make sure that you reach out to either one of us, and we will be glad to talk to you about the different ways that you can have effective communication. Keyword, effective. It has to be effective. So please reach out to either one of us. George, it has definitely been a blessing having you on the show. Thank you so much, man.
Thank you for having me. This was a fantastic, motivating conversation. I'm fired up now. I'm glad we didn't have this conversation at nighttime because I wouldn't be able to sleep now. I'm so fired up right now.
Oh my goodness, that makes two of us. I'm literally still getting chills, man. I wish I could show you. I'm still getting chills because I'm super excited and fired up about this whole podcast. I cannot wait to finish all of my editing and structuring and get this thing out there. So many people really need to hear this. I am super fired up.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, George.
All right. Thank you, man.
Peace and blessings to you, my friend. YTP Entertainment is out of here, everybody. Looking forward to seeing you again, George.
All right. See you next time, Yellow. Thanks for having me.
Take care. You're welcome. Anytime. Anytime.